then when I met Malidoma and he started teaching me about the elements of nature and engaging with earth and water and fire and so forth, I was able to translate that into, well, how does the earth manifest in our bodies? How does the water manifest? And I could relate each chakra to each natural element. And that became my life's work.
Welcome to Supernormalized, the podcast where we challenge the conventional, break boundaries, and normalize the supernatural. Join me, CJ, as we explore uncharted realms of existence and unravel the mysteries of our universe. If you have an unusual knowledge or unique story you'd love to share, reach out to me directly at supernormalized@proton.me. Let's make the supernatural the new normal. Today on the show, allow me to introduce Teri Lay, a remarkable individual who has dedicated her life to making sense of the seemingly nonsensical. Her unique expertise lies in bridging the gap between esoteric and metaphysical wisdoms of spirituality and the practicalities of everyday life. Teri has developed the MOZI Method, a groundbreaking system that integrates yoga, meditation, breathwork, shamanism, and mindfulness into brief 30-second exercises. Her approach makes these practices accessible to the average person, ensuring that mindfulness becomes an integral part of their daily routine. With a deep understanding of neuroscience and brain chemistry, Teri combines her knowledge of scientific studies with ancient practices to help her clients navigate major life transitions. Her ability to blend the spiritual and scientific is truly extraordinary, resulting in phenomenal outcomes for those who seek her guidance. Now, before we start today, dear listener, I truly appreciate your company on my audio journeys. And I'm sure you're actually enjoying the discussion as much as I am. And if you are, I implore you to please give me a 5-star rating and maybe even a beautiful positive commentary on the podcast app that you are listening to me on right now. That way other people can hear the show as well by discovering it through the algorithms. So that'd be very appreciated. Please share to your friends and family as well. And I thank you for your support. Welcome to Supernormalized, Teri Lay. Teri, you've done a lot of things in your life already, and one of those things is like quite mind-blowing. I read up about Malidoma Some as a shaman and a shamanic practitioner. He had a massive life. How did you come to get to be in a position of being the first youngest female to ever be initiated as an elder? That's wild.
So I met Malidoma in 2006, I think.
Yeah.
I went to a lecture here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, the United States, and he was presenting this lecture. And the very first thing he said was, I went to college and I went to grad school and I never studied because I could read all the answers in my teacher's auras.
What?
And exactly.
Wild.
And I was enthralled because I discovered as a child that I can see auras, and that's not normal. And so my entire life and much of my career is built on seeing and reading auras and chakras. And here I went to this lecture and I met this man who sees them better than I do. So immediately after the lecture, I had to meet him. And there was only maybe 100 people in the audience. So he was doing book signings afterwards, and I got to meet him. And it was like he could read in my aura and I could read in his aura that we were meant to connect. This was not a fluke that I showed up at his lecture.
Yeah.
It was actually like my mom had read his books and I was taking her to see him. I'd never read his books, but I was taking her to see him for Mother's Day. It was just a Mother's Day gift. And within a couple of weeks, I was signed up for his 2-year intensive shamanic indigenous trainings. And I went through that 2 years. And as part of that 2 years, he was watching all of his students to see who would be a good elder, because his elders had told him it's time to initiate modern men and women into our rights and our ways, so that we can start teaching our rights and our ways to these modern peoples. And he picked me out.
Wow.
And he said to me, you need to be one of these elders. And he actually called me his baby sister, and we got to be very close. I even like babysat his kids when he was on vacations and on trips and so forth. So I spent a lot of time with him over the course of 6 years. And then when the initiation happened, it started on my 36th birthday. And typically, elder initiation doesn't happen until you're in your 50s in his tribe. And it's sort of divined by the elders. Okay, this person is ready to be initiated. And he did a divination process with each of us. And for most of us, there were 13 of us. And for most of the 13, they had to do other ritual healing work to be ready for the initiation. But he just looked at me and said, you're good. Go for it. And wow, was that intense.
Yeah, wow. Look, so this has a backstory of you actually being able to see auras from a young age. I mean, was that one of the things that happened? Did many other things happen when you were younger that showed you that you could see other things as well?
It started with me as a 9 or 10-year-old child rejecting the Lutheran Church. Actually, my parents had raised us in the Lutheran Church, and one day at Sunday school, the teacher said, repeat after me, I love God first, my neighbor second, and myself last. And something in me said, that's not okay to say. And so I raised my hand and I said, but can't I love them all the same? Isn't God in everything and everyone? So can't I just love all? And they kicked me out of Sunday school and I was crying. And so after that service, I was crying to my dad and my mom, and they never took us back to that church.
Yeah.
And instead, they started searching for a new way to understand their religion and their spirituality. And they found intuitive development classes. And they found psychic awareness trainings. And part of that was because my brothers had a couple of phenomenal psychedelic type experiences.
Yes.
And the minister of that church had told them it was the devil and to stop it. And so my experience at the church was my parents' last straw. They're like, we're not going back to this church. And they found these psychic awareness classes and came home from these classes and would teach us kids what they had learned. And so one day, I'm 10 years old, and my dad said, people have auras. They're these colors. I'm like, yeah, Dad, don't you see that? I just knew. I'd always seen them. Yeah. And so my entire childhood from that point on was my dad cultivating that, like asking me, what do you see? What do you think it means? And that was just normal in my childhood. I knew it wasn't normal for other kids, but that's just how we lived in my household. And then the next really profound experience was when I found yoga. I was in my early 20s, and I started taking yoga classes. And my very first yoga class, it was one of those classes where the whole wall was mirrors. And prior to that, I had never really been able to see auras and chakras unless they were in person, like live.
Right.
And I'm in this yoga class and I could see them in the mirrors. And it was so distracting because everything this teacher said, I could see as an aura bouncing around the room and hitting the students. And then what the students were doing in their postures was changing all their energies. And I was so distracted by the light show going on that I couldn't pay attention to what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. So when I met Maladoma, it was just like, yes, I need to study with this man. And when he met me, he was just like, yes, she needs to be part of this work.
It sounds like a life path was written for you, definitely, by the sound of all that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild. That's wild. Sorry about laughing about the school, the Sunday school thing. I mean, that happened to me too. That's why I laughed, because I actually asked way too many questions, and they said, we probably don't think this is right for you. No, you're infecting the other children. Don't do that.
Infection. I believe that. Oh, I'm sorry it happened to you.
Yeah. So, okay, so you've had these major life experiences. I mean, was there any other hints of any other paranormal stuff that went along with that, or was this the major thing that was happening for you? Was the aura?
Those were the major.
Yeah,
And by the time I started practicing yoga, that just turned into a trajectory of a career
right,
where
right.
I realized I couldn't study what I was seeing as a student in the class because I'd get distracted. So I became a teacher so I could study what I was doing with my students. And I started
Yeah,
teaching
right.
yoga, and that everything went from there. I started doing chakra readings for a living, and then I met Malidoma and I started doing divinations and ritual healings and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So when you're in the yoga class and this is all happening for you, and were you getting like other intuitions besides being able to see the auras themselves? I mean, were you getting like ideas, inputs in other ways? Because sometimes impressions can come to us just as like a flash of a picture or a word or a smell or a feeling, and sometimes that's right. I mean, and if you tune that muscle, it gets stronger and stronger because it's like,
Right.
basically clairvoyance of some sort. So does that happen for you too?
I would say that it does. And this has been a natural, this is just how I normally am because
Mm.
I discovered at a young age. And also, both my brothers had similar experiences in childhood. That said, I learned more how to turn it off than turn it up. And as I learned to
Oh,
turn it,
right.
I don't want to say off, but I would turn it down because it was so overwhelming. I
Right.
couldn't function in everyday life, especially because my first 10 years of my career, I was a high school teacher
Mm.
and teaching adolescents the energies flying around the room and the imprints I was getting, it was just too overwhelming. So
Mm.
I learned how to turn it down and turn it where I wasn't paying attention to it.
Mm.
And then when I started teaching yoga, it was more about like fine tuning the knobs where I could pay attention to what I wanted to pay attention to. And I think then I was able to like calibrate and adjust. Okay, I can turn it on now where I'm in a session with the client and I'm reading this client. And I can turn it on in a different way when I'm teaching a yoga class and I can read. And there I would just read what I would see and sense from their body language.
Uh-huh.
And because it was so fascinating to me to see the words I would say hit their bodies and then their bodies change because what I told them to do and how that would change their auras. I studied how words and language, as well as body language and body positioning and body actions, would adjust the energies, the auras, and the chakras. And so
Um,
as I became a yoga teacher, I was much more fine tuned to those types of awarenesses rather than the cacophony of voices of all the other things that are in the universe. Because to live in
right.
that world was just too overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I met Malidoma and he started teaching me about the elements of nature and engaging with earth and water and fire and so forth, I was able to translate that into, well, how does the earth manifest in our bodies? How does the water manifest? And I could relate each chakra to each natural element. And that became my life's work is the chakras, the shamanic natural elements, and the linguistics, the language of word, and how words and movement and elements and all that can adjust and calibrate your energetic system.
Right.
And of course, then that changes your life.
How do they relate? I mean, can you take us through the chakras and like the basics of the elements?
Again, so there's 7 major chakras. The root chakra is obviously the root, so it's your earth, it's your ground, your support. Your sacral chakra is your pelvis, and that's where you hold on and let go of things. You hold on and let go of pee, you hold on and let go of poop, you hold on and let go of babies. And that is about your flow, which is water. Your core chakra is your belly, your digestive system. And that's about your identity, your confidence, your strength, your power. And that's fire, your passion, your drive, your fire. The heart chakra, which is where your lungs and your heart take in and let go of oxygen and move oxygen through your system, that is air. And air is where the oxygen comes from. The throat chakra is where we process and communicate information. And the information element is mineral. Like we use wires and minerals and stones to communicate. So that's your throat chakra. Your third eye chakra, which is your face and your sinuses and all of your senses. Well, nature, everything that lives and breathes, but specifically animals, have that instinctive, that intuitive, that third eye sense of your third eye chakra.
Mm.
And then the crown chakra is spirit, which is actually alcohol. And in indigenous cultures, as well as in almost every religious tradition, they use alcohol as a way to connect and relate to the spirit world, such as the blood of Christ in Christian traditions, and taking communion is wine. That's spirit. As is in Maladoma's tribe, in the Dagara tribe of Dano, Burkina Faso, they use beer to summon the Kuntumble and the spirit world. So the connection to the spirit world is spirit, and that's why we call it spirit.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. I used to do some experiments with ESP with some people, and we had a group that were tuned right in, and we could influence each other and throw ideas to each other and get each other's attention. But we found when we did alcohol, it stopped it instantly. So I'm really curious how that works the other way, because I mean, I've also had the other experience too, where I've had lots of alcohol and been broken open and flying around like an eagle. So it's like, what? I don't know where the
it
balance
has to be a mindful and conscious approach. You really have to use it, just like people are starting to use psychedelic plant medicines for healing and treatment now. You have to be very conscious. If you use it recreationally, it's going to derail everything. But if you use it medicinally and for spiritual purposes, it amplifies things.
That's right. Yeah. Well, the spirits of all these elements and tools, if you use them the wrong way, they can turn around and kick you in the butt. So
yes.
yeah. Okay. So you've developed this method with yoga that sounds like you've got like a like almost pure synesthesia going on, which is connecting your like subtle clairvoyant elements and clear seeing with the chakras and how people move. Were you actually in class with people and you started seeing all this, and then you're like, well, okay, that person needs to do this asana, and then you say, okay, go and do this one, and just to see what happened? Did you ever do that?
I would it depends on the class. If I had a large class, I would read the energy of the whole class.
Aha.
And what happens is when a whole group of people work together, you get sort of a collective or a collective chakra system. So I would teach to the collective rather than the individual. But then when I would go around and adjust and touch the individual, I might whisper to them, you need this, or do it this way, kind of thing. But if I was working with one or two clients, sometimes I often did privates or semi-privates with 2 to 5 clients, then I could definitely say, okay, you need this, and this is why.
Right. So then you would just guide them into a position, and then you could then obviously see the balance happen straight away.
Right.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. So you've developed a method which you've called the MOZI Method. Can you tell us about the MOZI Method, what it is, how, and what it does for people?
So what I discovered as I was teaching yoga is that I was only reaching a subset of the population. Really, yoga is not accessible to the masses. It's accessible to the physically fit and the spiritually inclined, but it's not accessible to the general populace. And I wanted to take what I knew works there and apply it to the general masses. And I thought, what are the things that stop people from taking yoga classes? Well, it's physical ability, it's time, and it's money and energy. And I thought, we'll put money aside. Let's just cut down let's take what we know, what I teach in yoga, and make it as simple as possible so that it doesn't take time. You don't have to go to a class. You can do it in 30 seconds or less. And how do I teach it in a way that I don't have to put people into pretzel positions? And so what I did was I just looked at the base pose of Tadasana, which is basically standing up straight in mountain pose. And I thought, let's break that down and look at the elements of all, because every pose in yoga really is mountain pose. It's about getting your spine in proper alignment and then moving your limbs around that spinal alignment. So I broke down how to teach proper spinal alignment and posture. And so the MOZI method is a series of 7 30-second exercises that systematically teach you this is how you hold your body to activate your root chakra. That's the first one. And so teaching people the actual action of what you do in your legs and feet to get proper Tadasana alignment in your legs and feet. That's the body action. Then the other piece of the MOZI method is the mental intention, being very clear in specific language and sound what they're thinking as they're doing that action, which is what I was doing when I was teaching yoga. Is my words were hitting the students and that was changing their energy. So I would choose those words very precisely in an affirmation. You are grounded, or I am safe. As you stand in a grounded, safe posture that is yogically aligned. So those two elements, body action and mindful intention. And then, of course, the element that everyone needs to learn in yoga is breath. And breath is spirit. So really teaching people how to breathe. And when they breathe, the psychic energy is moving through them better. And if they're breathing in a posture that is more aligned to spinal alignment, where your nerves and your chakras are in better position, and then you're sending that clear message of this is what you're doing, you're linking all 3 of the triad. And the magic of it is it only takes 10 seconds to take 2 breaths and get your nervous system in that position. And once someone learns all 7 systematically over a period of time, they learn all 7 major MOZI method exercises, they learn how to align their chakras without even knowing what the chakras are. They learn how to put their body into yoga Tadasana position without ever knowing that it's yoga. And they're doing it several times a day in their everyday life, every time they go to the bathroom. So it's becoming a tiny habit that makes and changes their world on the systemic, everyday, habitual nervous system level.
Wow. So you've got like a method that's like an expanding consciousness and body consciousness sort of tool that's like a Trojan horse. So people don't even really need to question it. And it's simple, and the changes are profound.
Yeah. The changes are profound, and it's so simple. The hardest part about it is just remembering to do it.
Yeah, you can always just set an alarm on your phone.
Which is what I tell my clients. Set an alarm, do this 5 times a day, put a little Post-it note on your toilet flusher, and every time you flush your toilet, you stand up and you do this exercise.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, 30 seconds is, nothing in a person's day, and anyone could dedicate that sort of time if they just read a little note that was next to them and just did it. That would be really very, very helpful. Very helpful. So you've seen a lot of changes in people around you by doing this work and getting them to take up the MOZI method. Can you give any examples of breakthroughs for people that you've seen?
I think I want to give you, I don't know why this one's coming up with you, CJ, maybe because you're so profound in your teaching. I want to give you a story of actually someone who died. So a client, girlfriend, dear friend of mine, she showed up to my yoga class the first day of her retirement and said, I want to learn yoga. And I was her yoga student and her friend for well over 15 years. And she, one day in her early 70s, she fell down the stairs and broke her neck. And in falling down the stairs and breaking her neck, she got a spinal cord injury. Of course, she'd been my yoga student for many years, so she knew all the yoga practices. But what happened was she could feel everything, but she lost function. So it was worse than being paralyzed, because at least with paralyzed, you're not feeling what's going on down below, but she could feel everything and she couldn't move it and adjust it herself without real intense mental energy. And she lived her life, her last 6 months of life, 7 months of life in a wheelchair, working with that body. And she used her MOZI method because that's really all she could do. She couldn't put herself in yoga positions anymore, but she could think a thought, and she could say, do a breath, and she could move just enough of her body to get at least one element, and she could feel the Tadasana alignment. So she would be doing the MOZI method in bed, breathing to help herself through the pain, to help herself through the process, to help herself through the mental emotions of what was going on. And as her injury progressed, eventually it came to one day she'd had 3 UTIs. The doctors just really didn't know how to manage a lot of her excess injuries and so forth. After the 3rd UTI took her in and out of the hospital, she looked at me clear as day. And she's like, I've been your yoga student. I'm clear. I know what my life is. I know what it's become. I'm done. And I knew what that meant. And I looked at her and I said, do you want help with that? And she said, yes, I'm done. And so we worked together with her energy, and she died a day and a half later.
Right. So you helped her to cross over gracefully, and
yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful.
And a lot of that was about her realizing that her life force energy, she didn't need it to be contained by the human body anymore. And when she fell, she broke, and her human body couldn't contain her life force anymore.
Right.
And so for over those months, and she and I talked about this, over those months that she was in the wheelchair, her life force was seeping into all the people she came in contact with.
Yeah.
And she was becoming part of the universe. And then that day she just said, I don't need to feel this pain anymore. I know what the other side is like because I'm experiencing it now. It's time. And so I just helped her mentally, emotionally, and even physically let go of her physical body and let her life force become the universe.
Wow, beautiful. Now, sometimes spirits come back and say hello. Has she made any contact with you, or is she's definitely like, no, I'm not coming back?
She's laughing right now.
Yeah, right.
It's also part of my belief system is that it's not her. It's when she died, she became everything.
Yeah, she integrated
her
to the
breath
universe.
So when I talk about her, it's not her, it's her in me. So I've really never cried or grieved her like I had grieved other deaths in my past, because I just knew she's expressing herself through me, and so many things I say that she gave me as memories in my life.
Yeah. Well, I think the big difference is that that she chose to leave. And that's a huge thing. So all power to her on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's huge. And do you have any other stories that you'd like to share about some of your clients that you've worked with?
I think I actually want to share a story about my experience with melanoma.
Oh, okay, please do.
That is really profound, and kind of how I understood how we process spirit through our bodies. So, and how prayer works. We had spent an entire weekend, he called it ancestralization, working with 2 ancestors, a male ancestor and a female ancestor, to invite them onto our celestial team. And the very last exercise, we'd spent the whole weekend, I had a stick to represent my paternal grandfather and a stool to represent my maternal grandmother. And the last exercise, we got a 3rd stick, and we were supposed to sit on the ground, butt on the ground, on the earth, and bang the stick on the stick and stool and tell them what we want. Tell them, this is prayer. Tell your grandpa, tell your grandma, this is what you want out of your life. This is the change you want shifted. And at that time, I owned a yoga studio, and it was hard work for me to keep that studio going and make ends meet every month. And I said, I want the studio to function without me. I want to not have to worry about that so that I can travel, because I need a bigger audience. I have beautiful things to teach and I need to get out. I want to travel. And he said, keep banging until the emotions come out of you, until your passion about what it is you want exudes out of you so much that you're banging it into this stick and stool. And so I'm doing that. And the next thing I know, I'm bawling my eyes out, just bawling, crying. And I realized in that moment, after crying for a while, that I'm so passionate about this and I want it so bad. I realized that that was my grandmother. She was a crier. And the bawling and the sobbing and the crying I was doing was a lot about how she would cry in her life. And so I realized she was embodying me and I was connecting with her as an ancestor. But at that moment when I made that realization, I thought it was like something clicked in my brain. I'm like, oh, that's how it works. And then I started laughing.
That's cool.
And I was laughing and laughing and laughing. And then I realized my grandfather was a jokester.
Yeah.
And he loved to figure out how things worked. And when he figured something out, he would laugh. And then I'm like, well, there's my grandpa. And then when I had
so
that
cool.
thought of that's my grandpa in me, it turned into cry laughing and laugh crying. And I couldn't tell the difference.
What a beautiful experience. Wow. And from that point, everything changed, yeah?
Yes, actually, what happened was within 2 months of that, the yoga studio closed. I actually, another church experience, the mega church down the street started preaching against my studio, saying that yoga is the devil and you better not go there.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I lost half my clients. And so I had to close and file bankruptcy. And then within a week of filing bankruptcy, one of my friends in Massachusetts said, hey, come out here and teach at my studio. And so she flew me out. I taught at her studio. I did dozens of chakra readings. And there were other yoga studio owners at that training who said, come teach at my studio, come teach at my studio. And the next thing I knew, I was traveling 3-4 weeks a month to different yoga studios all over America.
Where's answered.
So I got what I was banging for. I needed to travel and I needed to not worry about my yoga studio.
But that's very cool. It's good that your ancestors and your ancestral line peeking in your grandmother and your grandfather listened and then made it all unfold for you. Was that a long process that you went through with that? I mean, was that like, like a very heavy many hours or days type process? Because I'm shamanism and religious practices can actually be very, very long from what I've read.
It was part of the 2-year intensive I did with Malidoma. And so it was the second weekend and it was a 5-day ritual process. So this was the very last exercise of a 5-day process. And I did lead some of those over the coming years after I became an elder.
Yes.
So I've done some of that work with clients in the past.
Okay. So you've got like a structured course that you also do with people that work with this sort of initiation as well now?
I can teach and do the things that Malidoma was teaching. So yes.
Okay.
And I follow somewhat the same curriculum and structure that he taught, although he's deceased now, so he's in me as well.
Yes. Well, you've got a lot of people there that are helping you through your life now. I have a
huge celestial team.
Yeah, well, we call it the spirit team as well. So yeah, that's cool. Very cool. And so now you're going along in life now, and you've got this process. You've got the MOZI method. How does that all work out now with you in your life? I mean, you're obviously still helping a lot of people, and you've got your mindfulness exercises that people can pick up on your website for free. I mean, do you have books? Do you have trainings online that people can do? Because I mean, there's a lot of people out there that probably just can't come and see you. So how can they find you, and what can you do with it?
My website is my name, terilee.com, or Chakra's Coach goes to the same place. And I have 7 books on Amazon. I also have an online academy with all kinds of online courses and everything from a half an hour, here's how you can breathe, to several hours of here's the 7 chakra system and how you can calibrate and exercise yours. I also offer a 9-month mastermind program starting in January and going through September, where I take a group of people, 15 to 20 clients, in a cohort type mastermind experience through the 7 chakras over 9 months. And then I work one-on-one with clients as well. So all that can be found on my website, terilee.com.
Excellent. Do you actually work in one place, or do you travel around as well now?
I don't travel as much. I got married and settled down after traveling a lot. And now I have a happy home that I don't want to leave as much. I do occasionally to certain places that still ask me to once in a while. But most of my work is video clients and remote.
Yeah, right, right. Now, I have seen that you've noted that you do a bit of a blend of scientific knowledge into your approach with people. Do you find that actually helps with bridging the gap between the people that are, pretty much staunch atheists, materialists, and how does that play out?
Yes, yes. In my early career, I was very psychic, woo-woo, intuitive, especially when I owned the yoga studio and was traveling through yoga
Yeah,
studios around the country. And that, again, when I started the MOZI Method, I realized yoga is not accessible to the masses, and I wanted to reach more people. So I started studying neuroscience and brain training and how that intersects with yoga and breath work. And then I found a way to teach it because I have a master's in teaching and I spent years teaching high school kids.
right.
How do you teach this psychic, spiritual stuff in a very scientific way? And so that's what I do with the people who are not psychic, intuitive, phenomenal minded. I teach it entirely from this is your nervous system, this is how your nervous system works, and this is what the oxygen does to it. This is what the messages of your thoughts do to it. This is how your body actions and movements change your nervous system. And really your chakras are your nerves. So
Mm. Yeah,
it's a nice bridge. And what I find is when people find me in that scientific way, they become much more curious about more psychic, spiritual things.
yeah, yeah. You become the bridge to their step
Yeah.
into the woo woo, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. So I've also noticed that you've gone right into the detail of color and the chakras as well. And I find that really fascinating because I've done some chakra work myself with meditation, and I was guided by a spirit, otherwise known as an emissary, to do some work on my own chakras to get me in balance so I could be more of a channel to be able to connect with that emissary, which was really interesting at the time. And I did get colors and like all rotating type lotus type imagery and stuff. It was wild.
Yeah.
But you've gone into the detail about how the different chakras and what the imbalances are like and how that feels. Can you go through a part of that for people? Because some people may not actually recognize when they are imbalanced and just assume that's a part of life. But it could be
Right.
just in fact that there is a chakra that's out that just 30 seconds of an exercise could just flick back into order.
Right. A lot of it has to do with how the body is structured and where the chakra sits within the body. And it's a understanding of the symbolism and the metaphors around that body part.
Right.
So, for example, your heart chakra, it lives in your heart and your lungs. Well, what do your
Yeah.
heart and lungs do all day long? But they give out and they take in, give and receive.
Yeah.
And so your heart chakra is about giving and receiving. And your arms really do that all day long too. Is either you're giving something to someone or you're taking something from someone. You're giving a thought as you're writing it out on paper, or you're receiving a thought as you're taking it in and reading in a book. So your heart chakra is about giving and receiving. And if you're out of balance in that giving and receiving, you might be giving too much or you might be taking too much. And that's going to feel like things happening to your heart and lungs. Giving too much feels like you don't have enough air. You can't take in air, asthma, because you're not receiving enough. Taking too much feels like you're full, feels like you can't get any more air in because you're over full. Your
Right.
arms are heavy and your shoulders are tight and so forth. It can manifest in physical sensations. It can manifest in emotional sensations. That heavy pressing on your chest is an imbalance of that giving and taking. And
Mm.
really, every chakra is not about opening or closing. It's about finding that right balance. And it needs to adjust according to what's going on in your life. Like right now, CJ, your heart chakra is more on receiving mode. It needs to be more receiving because I'm giving information to you,
Mm.
as are all the listeners. And I'm more heart chakra giving because I'm giving. But now,
Yes.
as I finish this and I go hug my husband, or receive the meal that he cooked for me, I need to have the ability for my heart chakra to shift. I'm no longer giving, I'm receiving.
Yes.
And so finding that right, understanding each of the chakras and what they are balancing, and then calibrating and exercising them so that they know how to turn up when you need them and turn down when you don't.
All right. So you're actually teaching more of a modulation of the energies rather than
Yeah,
turning them off, just basically getting them back to balance. Yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay.
I've seen so many people get really excited about the chakras, and then
Mm.
they go find all those meditations online, and they're so focused on, I want to open my chakras. And then they end up so open that they can't function in everyday life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of
They're
course.
so, it's kind of like I was when I couldn't turn down the energies and there was too much noise.
Mm.
So it's not about just opening them, it's about learning to adjust them to what you need.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually looking at your website at the moment, and I'm seeing that the crown chakra is overthinking, and that's linked to imbalance, which is ancestral trauma. Is that correct?
It can be,
It can be.
definitely.
Is that a common thing?
It is very common
Okay.
because our nervous system is not just all of our own experiences, but it's all of our DNA
Ah.
and all of the history of all of our ancestors. And
Mm.
so we bring with us all of the memories of all of our ancestors. And if we overthink what's going on in our lives, that can trigger the same kind of over feeling that our ancestors had. And we don't even know why all that's going
Right.
on.
Oh,
And the
okay.
crown chakra really is about the connection to the other side, the spirit world, which is our ancestors.
Right. Now, I find it interesting that you've got the overwiring connected to the root chakra, and then that links into over controlling as well. I think for some people, and that's where everyone gets the sore lower back stuff happening. So, like,
Yep.
yeah, it seems it's so like I'm looking at it and going, my God, because I never thought of it this way before, and I'm reading it going, of course, that makes so much sense. Very cool.
that's that's the line I get the most. That
Yeah,
makes so much sense.
yeah, yeah.
That's what I do is I make sense.
Yeah. So you assist with people's major life transitions as well. How do you work with that with people? I mean, you've got listed on your site a few things like body changes, divorce, breakup, moving home, empty nest. I mean, you do help people transition into the later stages of life as well. And as you've mentioned before, you actually helped one of your close friends prepare themselves for crossing over. So how do you work with that when people are going to go through major life transitions? What can they do with you?
Well, first, let me explain what's happening in the chakra system. The
Yeah.
chakra system is our electrical wiring. Think of it like our operating system, our computer operating system for our entire body.
Yes.
So when we have a major life, critical life event, like the death of someone close to us or moving your home, that electrical wiring system is going to get overwhelmed with new input of all this strange stuff. And it's like putting too many applications on your computer at once. And
Yeah.
you need to upgrade your computer system.
Yes.
So when people come to me with a critical life event, that's where I do the best work because that's when the chakras are saying, we need an upgrade.
Oh.
And in that upgrade, I take them systematically, chakra by chakra, teaching them the MOZI method for each of the 7 chakras. Because in this, sorry, my dog, in that major life event, their chakras need to be almost like you do with an operating system upgrade. You need to shut down and then reinstall, and it needs time to calibrate itself to the new software. And so as I take people through the MOZI method of each of the 7 chakras, that's that realigning and re-upgrading to the new software system.
Right. How quickly does that work for people when they take on this method?
It depends on how much they do their homework. If they do the MOZI method 10 times a day, it happens a lot faster than if they do it 3 times a day
Yeah.
or once a day. It also depends on how open and excited they are about the actual upgrade. I've had people where they can go through it in 3 or 4 weeks and get through all 7 chakras and have that major life event managed in that short of time. And I've had people take 1 to 2 months per chakra.
Right.
And it really depends on A, what that critical life event is and how they're handling it already, what state their chakras were in before, and what state their chakras are upgrading to. So it also requires a really personalized, like they need to get a chakra reading from me to see where am I at and where am I going and how do we get there.
Yeah, right.
And so it's very, very personalized based. And so many people, like when they have one critical life event happen, many others happen too.
Mm.
And so if there's multi layers of, well, my husband died and because of that, my finances changed. And because of that, I lost my house. Well, that's 3 critical life events, right? All at once.
Yeah.
That's going to be a whole different game than if it's just someone who said, I'm adopting a baby and I want help upgrading. So I'm ready for that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. So Teri, look, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I think we've covered a lot there in the time that we've spoken. I can send everyone to your website and get them to have a look at your work and to maybe sign up for a free mini chakra reading as well. That would be really cool. I mean, how do you do that mini chakra reading? I mean, can you do that remotely?
I do it remotely. I couldn't
wow.
way in my 20s, but now after all the elder initiation and moving forward, it just takes me a few minutes of hearing your story that I can see which chakras are significantly showing up and what they're doing.
All right. Do you have prompts that you tell people to talk about when you're talking to them?
Yeah,
Okay.
I need them to talk to me. I don't like to read blindly like a psychic. I need to receive the information through a conversation.
Yeah, right. So
And
like
then
the
I can read
vibrational
very
energy
quickly.
sort of tunes you in.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Okay. Well, look, I'll send everyone to you.
Great. Thank you. I
It's been a
appreciate
pleasure
you.
talking to you. I've really enjoyed our conversation and your insights into the chakra system and how you can tune it, and your stories have been enlightening. Thank you very much, Teri. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate your openness and your curiosity. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Or
And
for you, it's morning.
it's morning here. So yeah, evening for you. Thank you. Yeah. All right, bye.
Bye.
Teri's insights into the chakra system are widely extensive, and also her impressions and understandings and experiences are. I'm literally blown away by it because of the depth of understanding. There's a lot there that I've not considered before, and as a part of this interview, I jumped onto her website at the same time and was going over it, and so many things just resonated for me, and I'm very, very, very touched that she took the time to talk with me today and to express all of her understanding. So I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did, and I look forward to having you back on for the show next week. And this is my first year show, so I'm glad that you've been along with me for all this time, if you have, and if you haven't, I'm glad you've enjoyed what you have enjoyed. So thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.